Hey guys, it's your host Xavier Alexis. Before we get started, I'd like to let you know that this episode does contain some information that is in no way legal advice from my part. The contents within this episode are simply my own experience as I dealt with it. So again, please, if you are in need of legal advice, I highly recommend for you to consult with an attorney, as every case is different. Let's get started. Holy shit, you guys. I just had like an epic, stupid moment right now because I just spent the last 20 something minutes passionately recording into my microphone, and then I look into my laptop's eyes, right? And it's not recording. Are you serious? Like, are you fucking kidding me? That's how we're gonna start? That's the day we're having? But anyways, hi guys. Welcome back to Vino Fino. My name is Xavier Alexis, your host, and I was a little more excited about this episode prior to me having to re-record myself, just because, you know, when you're passionate about something, I want to be passionate about it again, but I feel like I wasted some passion fruit on my last take, so we're going to let that marinate and just see what happens. My story begins with me and my mother today at the post office. Very dramatic. Let me paint the scene for you. Beautiful, gorgeous building. American flag flying high. Passport pictures in hand. We're going to the post office to get my mom's passport. The lovely lady that was helping us out was talking with us, and I think on the news or something like playing in the background, it was like talks about immigration, and somehow we got talking about how difficult it was and how expensive it can be, to legally be here in the country if you're immigrating here, right? And she was shook. She was like, "There's no way it's that much," and I just jokingly. Well, not jokingly, I legit went on the website, like uscis.gov, to show her just some, filing fees for some of these applications, just so she has an idea of just what submitting the piece of paper looks like. And she was shook. And it made me realize that maybe a lot of people don't know how difficult it is. And it's not even a maybe, that's a fact, because I've actually met several people that when you talk to them about you dealing with like immigration stuff, they're like, "What? There's no way it can be that difficult. Like, I thought it was just like an applying thing." Like, yeah, right. I wish. There's so much to it. So I'm going to share my story, at least what, I experienced, in hopes, that maybe it resonates with you, and maybe my scenario is similar to you, but even if it sounds similar, I highly recommend for you to consult with an attorney, because again, everything that I say is not legal advice. This was just my experience. I personally had an attorney consulting me, so I felt confident with, the things that I was doing, because I know how overwhelming this stuff can be. If you can't afford an attorney, there are a lot of workshops out there that you can go to where they'll assist you either filling out these forms, perhaps getting some kind of pro bono consultation or free consultation with someone. There are people out there that also dedicate their life to notarizing and helping out people like us that deal with immigration paperwork and filing stuff, that they're very familiar with it. You'll come to see that once you submit some stuff, you'll be quite proficient as well. So you'll be able to help others. And it's great, just pass on the knowledge, because again, every scenario is different. You never know what you qualify for, what you might not qualify for. It's just better to be safe than sorry, right? So with that being said, I was talking with this lady, and it made me want to share my story. And that begins with me coming here at the age of 2 years old. Okay, my parents brought me to America when I was about 2 years old, obviously against my will. Well, not really against my will. I didn't have a will. I was a baby. It's not like I was like, oh my God, where am I going? Like, bring me to America. I hear it's a vibe out there. No, I just came here because my parents brought me here, So I grew up in America, just like any gringo would, And by gringo, I'm not trying to offend anyone. I just mean any American, as us Mexicanos would say, would. I grew up here. I learned the language. No issue, whatever, right? Come to find out when I get a little older that I was born in Mexico. Well, I knew I was born in Mexico, but I didn't know that born in Mexico meant something. And to me, it meant that I was illegally present in the country. So once I turned 18, I was faced with the struggle of, fuck, there's a lot of things that I can't do that everyone around me is doing. And it was depressing, honestly. It was really, really depressing because, 18, just graduated from high school. There's a lot of things changing, and I felt like I missed out on a lot. And everything that I was able to accomplish, I had to work so much harder for it. And at the time, it didn't seem fair. And now that I'm older, I'm like, hell yeah, I'm proud of that. That's pretty badass. I did that. Fuck yeah. But I can see why it's overwhelming. I can see why it's so discouraging for others, and it's scary, But anyways, okay, so I came here when I was 2. I grew up here. I get older. I'm like, okay, fuck, what do I do? Thankfully, at some point during 2012, I believe, 2013, I forget the exact year, there was a thing called DACA that came out, which stands for, correct me if I'm wrong, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. I should know this, but I forgot. It's been a while. Which is the whole ordeal that you hear about to this day, DACA, right? So what it is, in like concise terms, is that it's pretty much a pathway for you to obtain something more permanent, whether it being like your permanent residency or citizenship or some kind of visa. You're allowed to legally be here in the country and work and have a driver's license, and you have a social security number. Pretty much, you're someone, you're on the books, you're registered, you're on the clock. Does that make sense? So once you have DACA, you have a timer, because there's a certain amount of time. For me, I believe it's still probably the same. Correct me if I'm wrong. Again, things have changed, and I'm sure they may be different in some way, shape, or form. But you had it for 2 years. You were given employment authorization for 2 years and a driver's license for 2 years. Once those 2 years were up, you could renew one more time, and that was it. So you got a total of 4 years, which is great. You can do a lot. You can thrive, if you hustle it. But what happens after those 4 years? So what happens is pretty much what's up to you. If you have the means to, okay? For example, like if you consult with a lawyer and you're like, okay, this is my situation. These are the facts. What can I do to get my green card or my citizenship? Or what can I do to pretty much just stay here in this country that I grew up in? This is my home. What can I do to not get deported? Right? For me, because my mother was a green card holder, since my grandmother was born here in America, she was able to become a citizen. Okay? She became a citizen prior to me turning 21. Okay? So because of that, I was able to pretty much give myself time, if that makes sense. So since I applied and everything before I turned 21, my application almost got frozen in time, if that makes sense. So that meant that I had time to plan my next step, okay? And when I say my next step is when you're doing immigration stuff, you want to be very precise about what you're doing, just because again it's a scary thing. You could pretty much just risk getting deported or getting sent back, or something getting delayed, or whatever it may be. So in that time period of having DACA for me, okay, I was able to submit my application to become a green card holder. Now, in order to become a green card holder, I had to, of course, pay the filing fees, attorney fees, etc., to do all my paperwork. On top of that, mind you, I had already paid the DACA filing fees. I had paid for my attorney to fill all that out, etc. So I had accumulated all those fees, right? On top of everything that I was going to accumulate in the future. So because of that, I was working, I was driving around legally, but I risked that in 4 years' time, I would lose everything and, I'd be stuck again, illegally present in the country. So because I was applying for my green card, I was set, right? No, I wasn't set, because turns out that since I was brought here when I was 2 illegally, that would put me up for the consequence of getting in trouble and deported for a few years, even though it was, not my choice to come here at the age of 2, because again, I was a baby, right? So, that was crazy. So now I'm like, okay, I'm so close to getting somewhere, but then you're telling me that I can't go any further, because if I go further, I could possibly get deported. So then I'm stressed out. Somehow my attorney found this loophole called advanced parole. And I believe it's application for travel document, like I-131, something like that. But what it is pretty much is that it grants you permission to travel outside of the country and conditionally come back, pretty much. Because it's not guaranteed even that you'll be allowed back, because it just depends on the agent that's helping you out at the border. But in order to apply for advanced parole, okay, and be considered for it, at the time there was 3 things that you either had to fall into. And those 3 things were, I believe, again, correct me if I'm wrong, was for work purposes, for humanitarian purposes, or for a family emergency. Unfortunately, I really didn't qualify for any. So there was really no way for me to find a way to exit the country and enter legally, as that was what's stopping me, right? If I entered the country legally and that risked me, that means that I would have to enter the country legally some way, shape, or form, right? That's what the attorney was telling me. So the only answer for me was advanced parole. That was the only way that I was going to be able to exit the country, right? And come back in legally. Because if I just left the country as it was, I didn't have a green card. I didn't have any permit. I had a driver's license and a social security card that said for work purposes only. No one was going to allow me back in. It's not like an agent's just going to open the door and just be like, hi, if you guys have never crossed the border, like, it's intense down there, right? So I'm dealing with all that. It's crazy. I'm halted. This is, I'm not talking about like, I submitted this within a week. This is like taking years, working with the attorney, me just constantly paying fees to get consultations, etc., get different opinions, come up with different actions plans, plan my next step. Somehow in those years, unfortunately, my uncle passed away. And this uncle was like my best friend. This was my homie. He protected me. He defended me from like my dad, from my psycho dad when he was going through things. This was my second dad, I would even dare say. He passed away, and because of his passing, I was able to request advanced parole, which is apply. I pretty much had to beg the government to let me exit the country so that I could go see my deceased uncle that I loved very much. And now that I talk about it, it's like sad, but I was heartbroken at the time, you guys. I was so heartbroken because I remember when I got the call from my mom. I was at work. I worked for Verizon at the time, and I get a call, and I remember I stepped to the back to like my locker, and she calls me and she's like, "Your uncle passed." And I just like, I remember lost. I had to leave. Like I literally had to leave. I didn't say anything. I think I walked out of work and I just left. And um I didn't even have time to process it because my mom called me like it was almost like a sign. It was like he passed and I had to act fast because it was almost like selfish. I feel so selfish because it's like, okay, my uncle passed, but then I was like, fuck, like this is like this is my chance to get my advanced parole. And the crazy thing about that, you guys, is that if you guys knew my relationship with my uncle and what we talked about prior to him passing, is that he was like, I'm gonna do anything that I can, my abuon, to, he would call me abuon, which it was like, that's what I called this little bear when I was little, so that's what he would call me. But he's like, I'll do anything to get your, you need to get your papers. He really wanted me to like, he believed in me. He knew I had dreams and he knew I could pursue them, and he knew how much I was being limited by being illegally here in the country. Again, it wasn't my fault, but that's just the circumstances. So one of the last conversations that we had was that he was going to do anything that he could to help me out. Little did I know that it was like him passing, like obviously that's not what he did. He's not like he killed himself for me to go over there, but he passed. And it was almost like, to me, it was like his last gift to me or something. It was like so sentimental. But what I'm getting to is that as I left work, I'm like bawling, crying, depressed that my uncle had just passed. And I'm sitting there at like the immigration offices in Sacramento and like all scared, right? Like with the application, the money in hand, ready to apply for advanced parole and hoping that they'll let me go see my uncle. You have to present travel plans, right? So I kind of presented my travel plans, what I thought I would travel. I couldn't really afford too much because work unfortunately wasn't letting me really go for that long. I think I had like a day or two to go. So I literally planned it out. Unfortunately, fortunately I was able to make it to Mexico, but timing wise, I wasn't able to make it out to the little pueblitos. That's the town that my family is from in Mexico, in Chihuahua, because I had to be back, unfortunately. And that was depressing, so it was just constant like depressing. So it was like almost like a blur. So I was able to cross over to Mexico, come back legally, which was trauma on its own. And somehow, because of that, legally crossing over, I was able to successfully send in my application confidently. And in 2017, I finally received my green card. After about, I think it was like $6,000 to $7,000 spent just on fees, filing fees, attorney fees, DACA, travel plans, etc. And years. It took about 4 years for everything to get going for me, and it was a crazy long process, and it was a constant roller coaster of, okay, this might work, but then this might not work, or there's this, but then there's also this. And just so you guys can get an idea as to what immigration is like, just so you can see what it would look like. For example, if you go to uscis.gov, which is the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services website, and we're going to click on just, let's do, okay, let's do, okay, I believe the one that I did was the I-130. And this is what you see, right? So it says, use this form if you are a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident and you need to establish your relationship to an eligible relative who wishes to come or remain in the United States permanently and get a permanent resident card, also called a green card. So that, I believe that pertained to me. So that's what I would apply to, right? So if you had no idea what this is doing, this is me at 18, actually younger, because I found that a little younger because, I started working under the table when I was like 13 years old. So, yeah, I was aware of this. Okay, but pretty much what it is you submit this application, but then you're like, okay, how do I know, how do I qualify? Like, how do I know if I qualify, right? So there is, for example, hold on. Sorry, you guys, I should have had this prepared probably, but I just want you to guys. Okay, so that filing fee just for that application on its own, for example, is $535, okay? So you submit that with your fee and everything, and then you submit all your paperwork, but okay, I can't find a direct example from here, but what I'm trying to get to is that with these immigration laws, it's so detailed. And that's why I really, really, really recommend for anybody that's dealing with this kind of stuff for you to seek out the advice of an attorney. Someone that has a good track record. Look up their track record, ask around maybe. On the internet is your best friend, but there's certain things, for example, I kind of talked about it earlier. For me, there's this thing where if you submit your application, for example, prior to you being 21, you qualify for so many things, right? There's so many more possibilities of you having a chance of maybe fixing your papers. But somehow magically, once you're over the age of 21, things become a little bit more difficult, okay? I don't necessarily know as to why, but that's just one example. Another thing, for example, that you might run into is a lot of people will wonder if they qualify because you have to kind of self-qualify yourself. You'll have to be like, okay, so I'm illegal, but my dad is illegal as well, but my mom isn't. Okay, so I'm like, okay, my mom can maybe fix my papers. And when I say fix my papers is, I guess that's a direct translation to what you would say in Spanish, which is arreglar mis papeles. And that just means that you're literally fixing your immigration status pretty much. You're trying to be here legally. That's what I mean by that, guys. I just lost my train of thought. Whack. Anyways, what I was trying to say is that there's so many directions that any case can go through. So definitely seek out the opinion from a lawyer, from an attorney. I don't know what the difference is between a lawyer and an attorney. Forgive me. I think I mentioned also that there's workshops out there at universities that I know of. For example, there's one at UC Davis that I used myself. I wish I remembered who or the workshop name, etc., so I could shout them out. But you're never really alone. There's people out there that are also willing to share their story. There's forums out there in immigration that you can kind of search up and kind of try to match up with your specific scenario, so you can kind of get an idea of what's in store for you or what to expect. Again, you guys, I really want to remind you all that everything in this brief episode is simply my own experience. I know that it's been brief and not super detailed, and the reason that I didn't want to get too into detailed is because I'll give you a headache. because there's so much terminology and legality to this stuff that it's just a little too intense. I kind of gave you just the premise of how it worked out for me. My father actually currently just received his green card. Now that's another story that I could tell. His took about, I would say, about 10 years in the making. So can you imagine applying somewhere and not hearing back for 10 years, right? Like, isn't that insane? So like, I think that there's this big confusion and stigma or whatever, that like people that are here illegally is like, you know, we're lazy and they're like, oh, why don't you just do it legally? Like, do it legally. Like, okay, like the people that can do it, trust me, like if there's a way, I guarantee you people are gonna do it, especially, you know, like people that are immigrating from a different country. There is no way that they're coming here, you know, wanting to do bad. Granted, yes, there's, you know, people that misbehave and blah, 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 but that's everywhere. You know, no one from a different country is doing anything worse than an American isn't doing, you know, like that's pretty much what I'm trying to say. So, yeah, that's my story. That was quick. I have some stories actually, from immigration, I guess, that I could share because they're crazy. I guess I'm just scared because I don't want to get in trouble. What if I get like a call from like immigration or something? They're like, hey, we heard that story and yeah, you're getting deported, fucker, or something. I don't know. I'm scared. Should I tell you? Maybe I should. Fuck it, I will. Fuck it, right? I'm gonna do it. Here we go. All right, guys, I started recording the story. I actually finished the story, but I decided that I'm not going to include that in here only because I can already hear my mom and my dad like bitching at me and asking me to take that away because it's, I don't know. Sometimes I just overshare too much. I don't know if it's like a Gemini thing. I don't know. It's probably not even a Gemini thing. I'm just like coming up with excuses for me to overshare, but I love it. But yeah, guys, this was a quick little episode, quick little podcast moment of me just talking about my immigration moments, you know, just crossing some border vibes, hashtag build that wall. Just kidding. Just kidding. No. We're canceled. All right, you guys, we're going to call it a day. It's late. I'm tired. You guys should get some rest. Take a breather. Take a moment, actually. Take a moment right now. Take a breather. Tell yourself that you love yourself. I love you. You love me. Let's get together and fuck Barney. Just kidding. That's not even how it goes. That's not the song, guys. That's not the song. All right. We'll see you guys next episode. Yeah, we'll be in touch. Follow me on Instagram if you haven't already at Xavier Alexis, and follow the official Instagram podcast profile. I can't talk, for Vino Fino, which is at Vino Fino X, and I will see you on there. Yeah. You'll see my face, some of my content. I need to start posting some more. But I definitely post on my story. Come check it out. I'll see you there.